Here, it is the first case of its kind against a transport company and could set a precedent for how the Equality Act is interpreted in the future. Today, disabled campaigners launched a civil case in Middlesbrough against their local bus company, Arriva North East. It is a subject we've covered in depth in our No Go Britain series and will have implications for transport providers right across the country, as Katie Razzle now reports.
We first met Anthony Wilson in March when we filmed him trying to catch a bus in Darlington at the start of our No Go Britain series. But he had a problem. The bus ramp was faulty, which meant he couldn't get on.
Does this happen often? All the time when I come to Darlington, all the time. That's why I don't come to Darlington.
With Anthony shivering in the cold, on this occasion the bus company Arriva North East sent a replacement to take him home. But this trainee teaching assistant says he's so fed up with his experiences on Arriva's buses, he's part of a class action against the company. This case pits Arriva buses against disabled people who say they're being discriminated against. Because unlike the rest of us, who can most likely take the first bus that comes along, they claim for them it's often a lottery about whether they can board at all. The case opened today here at Teesside Combined Court. The bus company has told the judge his decision will have implications for all Britain's transport companies. They're arguing about two issues: whether the claimants are right that Arriva North East's wheelchair ramps are often faulty, and whether the company is required by law to force non-disabled people out of the wheelchair space to make room for a disabled traveller. It's an argument about how to interpret the Equality Act, which protects disabled people from discrimination.
This is the first time that the court's ever had to decide whether or not providing a wheelchair space on its own amounts to a reasonable adjustment under the Equality Act. You know, thousands of passengers are turfed off the bus each day and left on the curb because there's something in that space. And this gives power to each of those disabled passengers to actually take those companies to task.
Arriva North East has told the court it acts in line with the law, training its drivers appropriately, but that it's not under a legal obligation to let a wheelchair user on the bus if the space is full. Its drivers can't compel people with pushchairs or shopping to move, it says. The claimants disagree. This afternoon, one of them, Jane Elliott, told the court about her problems with Arriva. The problem with the driver was his attitude. He treated me like I was a total waste of time. When I asked him to put the ramp down, he said, "I haven't got time for this, I'm late already." The case came about after a Darlington disability charity noticed it was getting lots of complaints about bus travel from local disabled people. They felt the bus company wasn't listening to them, so they called in the lawyers.
It has a massive impact on people's lives, because if you just look at anybody who isn't a wheelchair user, for instance, and say, if you can't get a bus or a taxi, how would you get about? How would you get to work? How would you get to the doctors? Not everybody has a car. And a lot of disabled people are on low incomes to start with.
The court's heard about how bus companies in different areas have different policies towards disabled travellers. The Transport for London, for example, tells its drivers they can refuse to keep driving if a non-disabled person won't make room for a wheelchair user. Here in the North East, disabled people have said enough is enough. They're demanding thousands in compensation and a ruling from the judge that transport companies will have to listen to.